All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. How are you? And you know how this goes. I will introduce myself in a moment, but we are in share mode right now. As you pop in, please say hello and please share this with someone. Let someone know that we are on for our Real Women Rock conversation. And I am almost done sharing. Hold on. I'm getting there. How are you all tonight? I hope that you're doing well. I'm looking forward to this conversation. It is so needed. And I know that you all are as well. So don't forget to share this with someone, some parent, some future parent, someone you know who has had a difficult time as it relates to the school system, especially during this time of COVID. We just want to have a realistic conversation about things you can consider. And so we would love for you to share this out with someone who may need it. And then this is always a good time to just to connect with some real women. So please share this with someone. All right. I think I've done all my sharing, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with starting a few minutes earlier because we always need every minute. So I'm going to start a bit earlier. Please pop in and say hello to us as you get the opportunity to say hello. We would love to hear from you. Just let me know you're here. My name is Dr. Trinace Richardson, and I am the founder of Real Women Rock, where we exist to create safe spaces for women to do personal development work on themselves. And we do that through sister circles. And pre-COVID, we were meeting in person as well as virtually. We had reserved our virtual meetings for our all access members pre-COVID. And we had created in-person sister circles in various areas, either our regular monthly meetings in the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia, Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads, Virginia. But we also have Real Women on the road. And so we have taken Real Women sister circles to Florida, to Pennsylvania, to New Jersey. We have gone plenty of places, New York. And so we've been a lot of places with Real Women. COVID does not allow us to do that in physical spaces now. So we have a wonderful opportunity in this space to connect with you all virtually, with more of you virtually, because no matter where you are in the country, you only have to turn on your smart device to connect with us in a virtual sister circle. We have opened our virtual sister circles up to all of you. So we hope that you would join us. Our very next sister circle happens Saturday, October 24th. So Saturday, October 24th, we are going to have a blast talking about, let me just tell you the title. That's my jam. We're going that's the title. The title of the topic is That's My Jam. And with all of the negativity that's happening right now, we're going to delve into some personal development, but we're going to start with finding out, do you know what you like? Do you know what you love? Do you know what your jam is? Not just musically, but in a lot of different areas. We're just going to start there because it's when we know what we love that we can incorporate that more into our lives. And we need more of what we love in our lives these days. So join us October 24th. If you want to know how to join us, you go to realwomenrock.org. Again, realwomenrock.org will give you information about our sister circles and information about who we are and how you can become an all access member. And we are also a 501c3 nonprofit in good standing. And so if you are interested in sowing into good ground, we are good ground. We are continuing our work. We are adjusting and pivoting with the times, and we are continuing to pour into women and help them with their personal development. So go there, realwomenrock.org, and you can find out all the different ways that you can support us. I'm so glad to have this opportunity, and I'm just going to go ahead and put her up here now so we can have a conversation, because Dr. April is an inspiration. Just the work that she has done in psychology, counseling, but also really focusing in on not just our elementary age or young people, but our Gen Zers and millennials and all the names. You can tell them old, but really helping us understand what it is either like to raise, or from their perspective, what it has been like to be raised as a child with exceptional needs. And so I am elated to have this conversation with you, because in this time and space, it is so needed. Would you mind saying hello to everybody and just telling us something about yourself, maybe some stuff that folks may or may not know, what you do, where you do it from, anything you can share with us?
So hello, everyone. My name is Dr. April Lisbon. I'm an award-winning author, speaker, and teacher. And really, I've been a school psychologist for the last 21 years. I can't believe I'm saying that. I know. So really what I do is I help to give voice to millennials and Gen Zs who may be on the autism spectrum, ADHD, learning disabilities, giving them an opportunity to share their stories. And what I mean by that is because for far too long, we as parents and educators have really dictated their storylines and their, how they should grow up. And being the parent of a child who is on the autism spectrum, I found that I was taking his power away from him. And that was really his voice. And so when I saw that, I was like, this doesn't work for me anymore. This doesn't work for him anymore. So I decided to get on this crusade of really creating opportunities for millennials and Gen Zs who have neurodiversities to not only share their truth for the first time to a lot of people, but to also create a platform where they can help other younger children like themselves to really see that there's hope at the light at the end of the tunnel.
Oh, that is so good.
And parents too.
Yeah.
No,
let me tell you why that exactly your niche and your focus is so important, because maybe young people at their youngest of ages did not either have the words or the ability to articulate all of what they have experienced. But right at that young adult age, they're able to clearly articulate and remember, these are my experiences. This is what would have helped me more. This is what, was really helpful to me. And so to really reach back and say, not just talk to the parent what you should and should not do from an adult and a school psychologist perspective, but let's talk to these young adults and find out what their experience was like and what they could do or know better for their children, for the adults' children's coming behind them. I think it's just amazing the work that you're doing.
Absolutely.
Have you found that it's been really helpful for the millennials to really reflect on and to process what they've been going through?
Absolutely, I have. And I think a lot of it is because sometimes they don't recognize the growth that they've made over the years because of the stigma that's often associated with their diagnoses. And so having the opportunity to really share what was to where they are now, it's like, oh my gosh, I've really come far,
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't celebrate, the small things, the small steps. We as adults, we always tell our kids, celebrate the small steps, celebrate the small steps. But when you are someone who lives in a world where other people may not understand your disability, it's hard to celebrate the small steps. So sometimes you kind of sort of like sweep it under the rug. That's what I found for a lot of the people that I've interviewed. Really, yeah, that's right. The show finished for this year. But but as they began to talk about it and they shared what life was like back in middle school, everybody seemed to centralize on the middle school years. But where they see where they were from middle school to where they are now, it was like that aha moment, like, oh my gosh, I've accomplished so much, and so it gave them their power back. And I think that was the big thing for me. They really saw not only that they could do, but they had the power to make a difference for themselves as well as for other people around them. And so
that is
that's
so
the best
good.
takeaway for me, that I've loved doing the show.
Yeah. So, okay. So before I ask you kind of what caused you to get into this work, I do want to know that. Y'all, I have put in the chat, and no pressure, whether it's live or on the replay, if you are aware of either a child or a young adult, a person who is coping now or who has dealt with coping with exceptional needs issues, like whatever they were dealing with as a result of having exceptional needs, then let us know in the chat, yes, that you're aware of some persons who have dealt with it and how they were able to overcome it or what they utilized, what kinds of resources, because we'll talk about some of that. But I wanted to find out from you first, how would we, I don't know if it's a definition that I'm looking for or what falls under the umbrella of children with exceptional needs, so we know what we're talking about.
Oh, absolutely. So this would be any individual who has what we call a DSM-5 or a clinical, medical, or even an educational diagnosis of some type of learning difference.
Okay.
So that learning difference could be a learning disability for most people in the field associated with reading. So typically you would hear the word dyslexia. That could be someone with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder with inattention, combined type with his hyperactivity impulsivity or just hyperactivity impulsivity. That could be autism. That could be someone with an intellectual disability. Just anything that would create a space where a person would have difficulties learning academically, socially, mentally, or emotionally.
Yeah.
So that's what it really looks like.
Yeah. And that's so important because I can think in my life, I'll answer my own question for now, that I'm well aware of many people in my family as friends and loved ones who were had learning differences. And I love the language attached to it because all it is a difference. and
Really.
and what we found is, we have different ways of learning and we are gifted in different areas and in different ways. And someone who may not be able to spell as well as someone else is so musically inclined, they would run circles around you. And so to be able to find what your strengths are, I think is really the test of moving through and surviving. It's like moving past what everybody thinks you should be able to do to find what your gifting is so that you can shine brilliantly. What caused you to get into this work?
You know what? Actually, it was because of my son. So I actually have a child who is on the autism spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
But when I think about our journey and his story, he would be one of the ones where, if you look at him, you would never know that he was autistic.
Mm-hmm.
However, he's outgrown a lot of his quirks, but he still has a couple of quirks here and there and everywhere. And so our family actually hit a critical point in time in our life in seventh grade where he was severely bullied. And it caused us to go through, some peaks and some hills and some emotional valleys, to the point where, like I tell people, the autism got the best of him.
Mm-hmm.
And so he wasn't himself.
Yeah.
And so academically, his grades declined, behaviorally, emotionally, everything just declined. And so, we hit a rough patch as a family, that really caused us to question, how safe is school for someone on the spectrum? Are there enough resources in the community to really support individuals on the autism spectrum? But for me as a parent, I felt helpless. I felt clueless because all of the years of experience that I had as a school psychologist and all of the interventions that I provided other parents of children with exceptional needs, I couldn't support my own child.
Wow.
And so for me, I got to the point where I felt helpless, I felt hopeless, and honestly, I felt like a fraud, to all the parents that I was working with. And so once, our family kind of sort of started getting back together a year later, I decided, I was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes, to find someone who gets you, to find someone who understands you. And so I ended up connecting with one of my grad school moms who I didn't even know that her son was on the spectrum.
Wow.
And it was kind of sort of a setup like this where I was trying to do a YouTube channel
Mm-hmm.
about a couple of years ago.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden he walked in the door, and just like my son, you would have never known that he was on the spectrum. He had an amazing job, highly educated, Harvard graduate, everything that you can think of that people say individuals with learning differences should not be able to accomplish. There, this individual was walking through the door,
Wow.
and from that day forward, I said my son was blessed to have this mentor, but I said every other child in this world is not going to have this mentor.
Mm.
And so from that day forward, I said the best people to really work and support individuals with learning differences are people who get it, are people who live it, and people who have gone through the highs and the lows to
Yeah.
let you know this is normal for you.
Yeah.
Don't allow other people to make you feel like this is abnormal because they don't get it because they're
Yeah.
walking in your shoes.
Mhm.
And so from that day forward, like I said, I've been on this crusade to supporting millennials and Gen Zs in
Good.
the workplace because once again they're out there.
Mhm.
They didn't have their, as I call it, Mr. Alex, that's his name. They didn't have their Mr. Alexes when they were growing up, and so they need someone to support them by allowing them to share their stories and to give them the voice that they deserve, that they've earned,
Yeah.
going through their journey. And then, like I said, by having the digital footprint, I'm then able to support other families and other, younger kids who are like, I don't get it, mom, you don't get it, dad, you don't get it, you don't know what it's like
Mhm.
to be me. It's like, well, here, I found someone on YouTube who gets your story.
Yeah.
You can hear it from them. And so, like I said, it really came out of a crisis moment within our family that I felt hopeless and I felt helpless. But then I felt like, you know what, April, you can do more than this. You have to find what works for your son. And I'm so thankful for Mr. Alex, for first of all, for just taking the opportunity just to talk to my son,
Mhm.
and giving my son back his power,
Yeah.
that you do have a voice, that you do matter, that your disability of autism does not define who you are as a
Yeah.
person, you define it. And so once my son got that, his, chest got back strong,
I know that's
he was
right.
like, he felt like he was bold and brave. And I'm telling you, the grades went back up, the behaviors went back up. He's in JROTC. He's actually a corporal for his what do you call it?
Maybe unit, maybe.
For his unit, yeah, whatever
Yeah.
you
Okay.
call it.
Yeah.
You know,
I said it. Okay. Good.
things that people say that autistic people can't do, he's proved
Mhm.
them wrong, and that's because he had support. And so that's what it is for me. Is finding people who have the same learning differences as other kids my son age and in high school level who've gone through the highs and lows, but they've survived it all. And so
Yeah.
that's my
This
fight.
is so good. I love what you're sharing because what it's helping me understand is this, and I'm going to ask you about the specific things in a second that you've learned from talking to the Gen Zs and the millennials, what kinds of things they've shared with you. But it seems as though I'm hearing from you with your experience with your son that mentorship, that connecting with someone who has experienced what they've experienced, that is something that meant the world to him because he was able to overcome any of his challenges because he saw somebody who had overcome them. And how I can't think of anyone who doesn't benefit from that. You know what I'm saying? Like, no matter what our learning differences are, we all appreciate that type of learning from someone, that type of modeling
Mhm.
and that type of example before us. That so it closes the gap even the more between us, anybody, and anybody with learning differences. All of us with learning differences really just have the opportunity to learn from somebody else. I think it brings us to a better place. So I love that. I have in the chat, you all, what is your area of gifted brilliance? Because as we just said, no matter what your learning differences are, or no matter what young people's learning differences are, all of us have an area of gifted brilliance. And what I'm hoping, a couple of things that this conversation will help parents of children with exceptional needs, that we'll be able to learn some things from some of your findings and your interviews in just a second, but also that we'll understand that we are no different, that you are no different. And so in all of the ways that isms happen in the world right now, that we can close those gaps and have conversations that bring us closer and commonalities rather than in differences. And so I really appreciate the work that you do. Could you speak from the work that you do? What have you learned from the young adults that you've interviewed that they would want either their parents or even us as the general public to know about their journeys?
You know what? One of the things that was surprising to me, and I guess because, like I said, I've been a school psychologist for the last 21 years. So
Mhm.
for me, you would think that a lot of the millennials and a lot of the Gen Zs would be comfortable in sharing their story. And what I
Mhm.
mean by that is that, they are well advanced, they are part of the technology generation, they are free flowing spirits. That's what I tell
Mhm.
people. But what I learned from each and every individual thus far is that they want to share their voices, but the outer circle or families, that
Mhm.
way, I won't say parents, families have the tendency to still want to hide behind the closet doors, if that makes sense. So
Wow.
then it creates a space where, they question, do I have what it takes to be successful?
Ooh.
And I understand from the perspective of the parent because I'm trying to protect you from the big bad people, and I put it in quotes, people in the world who
Yeah.
will treat you differently because of your disability. Whereas they're trying to fight back and say, I understand that I have this diagnosis, but this diagnosis doesn't define me. So it's almost like a war between parents and family and children as far as how and when to activate the voice.
Ooh.
Um, you
Can
know,
I ask you a question about that? That is so good because what I think, ooh, we can all identify with our voices being muted or, muzzled,
right.
smothered, at some point where we believe our voice, our story would help someone, but for the sake of whatever, confidentiality, for the sake of political correctness, for the sake of whatever the reason, pride, all of those things. Do you think some of it for parents could be it you sharing outwardly might be an indication or lack of something that I was able to give you? Like, do you think there's a little bit of ego attached to it? And if that's the case, I'm only mentioning that to say we have to get ourselves out of the way so that our young people in every area of their lives, including their challenges, can use their voice for their own freedom, but so they can help others.
Right.
Do you think that's a little bit of it too with
Some of
parents
it,
and
some of it's
family?
a little bit of ego, but a lot of it is guilt.
Mm,
Because I know I did the mommy shaming and the mommy guilt when I found out my son was on the spectrum. I questioned, what did I do right? What did, who did I allow to stress me out? What foods did I eat? Did I not take my vitamins? That guilt really impacts you more than anything. And so if you come from a space, especially if you don't have um, family members with learning
mm,
differences, it makes it much more challenging. So I think if we had like, one or two individuals on the spectrum that I was aware of, then I would have said, okay, this is just hereditary. This is something that I know about. But because on both sides of my family, there's no one that I am aware of that's on the spectrum, that's where the guilt and the shame came from. And then to top it off, that I'm a school psychologist, I'm like, how in the world did this happen to you? Kind of a thing. That's
mhm,
the work that I do.
mm,
And so, yes, ego got in the way. It's like,
yeah.
you should have known better. You should have did this better. You should have got him, in therapy a whole lot sooner, but what I like to tell people is that you can't go back to what was. You have
Yeah,
to focus on where you are right now.
that's so
And the
good.
most important thing right now for you to do is listen to your child.
Mm,
We as parents always want to promote self-advocacy for our children, but when they're ready to self-advocate, then immediately we're trying to like run in and save the day.
mm,
And we as parents have to get out of our kids' way because we're not helping them when we're jumping in to save the day. Because what we're telling them is that, you know, I don't
ooh,
trust you enough to trust your own independence.
mm,
I don't trust you enough, to have your own voice. And because we are the parents, then it causes our kids to question, well, do I really have a voice? Can
Ooh.
I ever really be independent? And see, my son he's me without the autism. Don't tell anybody that, but my son is me.
Yeah.
And he literally last school year as a freshman basically told me, Mama, I don't want your help. I
Mhm.
was like, hold up, wait a minute. Do you know all the things I went through to get you to this point?
Yeah.
And then I had to take a step back and I'm like, oh my gosh, April, he is actually advocating for himself. He's
Yeah.
telling you, Mom, I want to be able to work this out on my own. Then I was like, oh my gosh, all the stuff we talked about with self-advocacy and building, creating an advocate for himself, he's really doing it.
Yeah.
And honestly, it scared me because I've always been his voice.
Yeah.
So I'm learning, not learned, I'm learning
Oh,
a fine line.
this
I
is so good. Somebody just said, I love this. I love this too. It's so helpful because I believe any parent, any potential parent, any guardian, anyone who loves a young person can learn from this, that we have to let them, fly. We have to let them have their voice. But even in those areas where we think they need to be sheltered or they need to be protected, that if we don't ever give them a chance to fly, to have their voice, they won't know how to use it. They will not know how to exercise it. They won't strengthen that muscle if we don't give them a chance. This is so good.
Absolutely.
And so I wanted you to hear a couple of thoughts that came up in the chat. Such good stuff. Agreeing with you. Reese says, my son had a speech impediment. I would make sure people didn't call on him to protect him. It didn't help him. It hurt.
Yeah.
So the idea that we have to give them that space in that room. And then one of our friends, T, says she would love to connect you with a friend who is a history maker and is on the autism spectrum. He can be a great example of encouragement in the work that you're doing, because she's writing, for those of you who are just tuning in, Dr. April is writing and interviewing Gen Zs and millennials who have experienced all of the journey of being a child with exceptional needs, and now sharing their stories and reflecting on their experiences to help those of us who need to hear it, whether we are parents of children with exceptional needs, or to let other children with exceptional needs know that you can move past this, you will thrive, you can thrive, and move forward. And so, yep, someone says you taught him to use his voice, and now you got to step back and let him do it, right, Dr. April? Yeah, this is so good. So I would love to hear from you, either from your interviews and from your work, or and I think you shared so much of it, but when we are still in the stage, whether on the sidelines or whether they are very young and we're still doing it, what are some of the ways that we can advocate for our children with exceptional needs? What have you heard Gen Zs and millennials say they appreciate?
Mhm.
Or what have you in your experience seen that is appreciated? Because we know we got to give them their space, but we've got to equip them too, right? So what do we do to advocate on their behalf?
So one of the things that I've learned from all the different interviews that I had is that parents have to know when to be the cheerleader, when to be the teacher, and then when to be the mama or the papa bear.
Ooh.
That is so important for individuals with
Oh,
exceptional needs.
say them again, Dr. April.
Teacher,
Uh-huh.
cheerleader,
Uh-huh.
mama or papa bear.
Okay, got it.
I don't want to say fighter because
Uh-huh.
there's other fighting education in other places. So
Got you. We know what you mean.
exactly.
Look, we got you. We know what you
And
mean.
run the sleeve.
We got
Exactly.
you.
Get the vaccine and everything.
Okay, go ahead.
Because what I've learned from all of them is that sometimes they just want us as the parents just to show them how to do it, and then they can model it back for us.
Yeah.
Then there are other times where they want us to celebrate it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. They just want us to celebrate the small steps, because when they see us celebrating the small steps, they know that, oh my gosh, I did a good job.
Mhm.
And for a lot of kids, regardless of their disability, they're people pleasers, especially at the very young age. So they need us to celebrate them versus condemning them when they don't do it right,
Mm.
if that makes sense. And I always refer back to the IEP. What they said you're supposed to be able to do. If the child isn't doing it, then sometimes we as parents, we try to condemn our kids, not because we're trying to be mean, but because we're expecting growth. And so we forget that our kids are still kids too, with their own personalities.
Mhm.
Because
Ooh,
sometimes we get so focused on the disability that we forget the person behind the disability.
yeah.
And I don't say in front of, I say behind, because once again,
Mhm.
we are so centered focused on the disability that we forget the little person that's there.
Oh, that
Yeah.
is so good. And I keep saying this because it's true. Everything you are saying is true no matter where someone is on the learning spectrum, because we have to learn to decipher when to be the parent, the cheerleader, when to be, I'm going to get them right, when to be the mama papa bear,
Mhm.
and when to be the, what's the last, teacher. I
Yep.
got them. I got them because I'm a parent. So I need to keep all these in my head. I'm on the couch with you right now, Dr. April. I'm learning. So it is so important to be able, and that's oftentimes where we're always learning and we're always doing the best that we can as parents, but that's where we often make most of our mistakes, when we are stepping in when we shouldn't step in, when we're cheering on them so much that we don't give them the opportunity to learn from their mistakes. We don't tell them they have mistakes. That was wrong, baby, you need to do that over.
Exactly.
I can't I can't rah you on that. Do that over. Go back. And so, and being their teacher and pouring into them. I love that. Any final words that you have for us? This half an hour flies by. I would love for you, in your final words, to share any of your resources, your books, website, anything you have for us that you'd like for us to follow up with you regarding.
Yeah, absolutely. So, to learn more about the show and the interviews that we've done, you can go on YouTube, and the title of the show is Finding the Superpowers Within, with
Mm.
Dr. April J. Lisbon. So that's actually a partnership with Different Brains, which is a nonprofit organization out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where they really focus in on giving voice to neurodiverse learners. And so I did a pitch and they bought into it. And so I created the platform for millennials and Gen Zs, the first within this organization. So and Trailblazer.
Let's celebrate that.
Trailblazer. So yeah, so you can catch that on YouTube or the differentbrains.org website. And
Mhm.
that, once again, that's Finding the Superpowers Within, with Dr. April J. Lisbon. As far as books, you can find my books on Amazon. So I actually have a book, 3 books, really focusing on families with children with exceptional needs. So you can always look on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, as well as Walmart online. So I'm in there as well. And really, as far as just resources, one of the things that I just tell people, you know, it if you can find a family member, and what I mean by family member, if you can find a young adult that's willing to share their story with your child, that's the best gift that you can give them. I cannot stress, you know, when we as parents get to the point where we are okay with our child's disability, then our kids will be okay with their disability, and they'll be willing to share with it, because they won't see it as an obstacle, they won't see it as a negative, they will just see it, once again, as a learning difference. And
Yeah.
so if you have anyone that's in your community that's a millennial or Gen Z, and I'm telling you, these millennials and these Gen Zs that I've connected with, they didn't know me from Adam. Only one did. Well, 3 of them did, but the rest of them, they didn't know me. They were willing to share their stories because they get it. And I think that's the most powerful thing that I've learned throughout this journey. Our millennials and our Gen Zs are difference makers, and they want to groom and to grow the next difference makers,
Mhm.
in our society. So if you have the ability to connect your child with someone who's just like them as far as the diagnosis, that will be the greatest gift, not only for your child, but for you too. Because I cannot tell you how many aha moments I got from when I would be, like you said, extra cheerleaderish on my child and thinking that he was doing something wrong. And in fact, that was his normal. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's doing the exact same thing as you. And he's 25 and you're, at that time, I'm like, and you're 12. That's normal.
Yeah.
Shut the front door. Because that was outside of my norm.
Yeah.
But to watch someone like my son do the exact same thing, I'm like, I have found a home. You have found a home. We are home.
You know what's amazing? Nothing gets normalized until we talk about it.
Yes.
Like until we put it out there, nothing. And we know this is true because negativity gets normalized the more we talk about it. We get desensitized with all the crap that happens around us because it's everywhere now. It permeates media and all those things. And so why not take that same stance with those things that we know would educate us, would bring us together, would bridge gaps, would allow us to understand each other better. The more we talk about it and give voice to it, and I would even say, going to YouTube, to your page, finding the superpowers within, and getting educated, no matter what, whether you have a child or not, whether your child is on the spectrum or not, because we all need to understand that we are more common than we are different. And you have really just echoed that in my head for me and my heart for me today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And you're pouring into all of us. This has been amazing. I thank you so much. Let me tell y'all, everybody needs to hear this, but especially those that I know some families, I know some women, I know some homeschool moms, I know some folks who have children and they're older now, or maybe they're, still in school, but they have children with exceptional needs, and they need to connect with the work that Dr. April is doing. So if you are aware of anyone, do what I'm going to do. I'm going to share the YouTube page and this video so that they can become aware. And for those of you who want to pass on folks that can be interviewed by Dr. April, please, they can go to your Facebook page, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so we would love for you to do that.
Facebook, LinkedIn, or you can send me, excuse me, you can send me an email at DocApril, that's DocApril, at AprilJLisbon, LISBON.com.
Got it. Got it. I'm putting it in here. Thank you so much for your time. Listen, you all, this has been a Real Women Real Women Rock Facebook Live chat. We are here every Wednesday night that we have a guest at 8 p.m. And we just give you a sneak peek into a real conversation with real women. We want to make sure that you're a part of the conversation. So please join us again next Wednesday. We also have sister circles that we want you to be a part of. Our next one is October 24th. It will be virtual, so no matter where you are, you can join us. In order to find out more information, go to realwomenrock.org, realwomenrock.org, and that's also where you can go if you'd like to donate. We are a 501c3, and you would be sowing into good ground. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Dr. April.
Thank you.
All right, y'all have a good night.